Straight to the news on the other side of the world with Esther Krakue. Esther, great to see you as always. Now, Greenpeace has gotten creative with its latest stunt. Instead of let's forget about defacing priceless artworks, we've destroyed them all now. Let's go and look at going straight to the source. So they put a movie time pic up on the UK Prime Minister's house or something. What have they been doing, Esther?
Well, they decided to get a bit more strategic and realised that irritating the public is probably not the best way to get their message across. So they decided to go to Rishi Sunak's mansion in Yorkshire and project a film of people struggling with fuel poverty, which I personally think is a far more effective way, particularly because it doesn't bother anyone else but the Prime Minister, who doesn't happen to even be there. But they're making the point that people are really going to be struggling. I think their point is a bit disjointed, though, because on the one hand, they want us to stop using fossil fuels, but on the other hand, they're complaining about fuel poverty. What exactly do they think people are going to be using as fuel during the winter? Exactly. Which is very confusing to me.
Well, Esther, I don't know if Greenpeace have a headquarters or something in London, but surely they should be putting the projector up against themselves, because it is all the green policies, it is all the green dogma, the green ideology that has left the Brits in this position where they're completely vulnerable and left Europe in the same position. Indeed, we've spoken, Esther, before about France's energy crisis, but in the UK, it's getting colder behind you there. It's getting colder and the days are getting shorter. It's going to be a very frosty winter, isn't it?
It is. It's going to be a very, very frosty winter. And I think the bigger point here is, what happens next? Because people can tolerate to an extent the fact that there's a fuel shortage, just, given the extraordinary circumstances of the Ukraine war and, supplies recovering from the COVID kind of slowdown. But we're really looking ahead. People are not going to tolerate this next winter or the winter after that. So we're looking at Rishi Sunak and his government to really outline a long-term strategy. And that's really going to tick off the eco-activists like Greenpeace and Just Stop Oil, because the reality is we are going to be using more fossil fuels. We need to actually secure our energy supplies, and we actually need to have an excess energy supply that will actually offset when the market is reducing its supplies to meet reduced demand, for instance, like what happened during COVID. And this is something that we really need to get to grips with, because the reality is the government needs to make sure that we never are in this situation again, and that is going to require some form of energy security that is going to look like fossil fuel usage.
Yeah, and we can also blame a lot of Britain's woes on King Charles, or Prince Charles as he was, wandering around with all his environmental nonsense. And there is some bombshell news, Esther, about King Charles. A palace source has claimed that King Charles's staff back in the day were responsible for orchestrating a systematic smear campaign against Princess Diana and actively sought to make her life hell. Now, Esther, you do not know this, but I have first-hand experience of this very thing, which I shall tell you about in a second. But you tell me what is happening, what this story is all about.
Yeah, so Princess Diana's former private secretary has come out and said, the fact that King Charles's staff really made this systematic attack on her and her mental health and painted her as this sort of crazy, unstable lady. It really upset her. And, the private secretary was saying that they actually saw a completely different side to Diana, which was immense sort of mental fortitude, being the future king's wife and being in this family and having to deal with all of that, and the fact that her husband had a mistress the entire time. And I think we all suspected and we all knew this. And there are always people in these situations that are painted as crazy when they have legitimate concerns. But I think, looking back now, 20 years ahead, we all know that Princess Diana was not crazy or not sort of mentally unstable or anything like that. She actually showed a great deal of mental strength. And it's just one of those things that we always hark back on, because she was really treated very unfairly and very poorly. But at the same time, they were in a custody battle and a fiery divorce. And these things do happen. It's very rare for people to get divorced amicably, especially when you're in the spotlight like this. But I do think the way that she was treated was absolutely awful.
Well, Esther, as I said, I had a story to tell you, which was I danced with Princess Diana at the Birthright Ball which was fantastic. Danced with her, which was great, in 1985. We had a great dance on the dance floor there. And Prince Charles, as he then was, came storming up, broke up our dance and started screaming at her about how terrible it was to dance with me or dance with an Australian. I'm not sure which upset him the most. Anyway, I saw it firsthand, Esther, so I thought you'd enjoy that story. But before we go, another queen, the Queen of Christmas, This is Mariah Carey. She wanted the famous film, Love Actually, had her song in it, All I Want for Christmas. She wanted to trademark her name as the Queen of Christmas, but it was rejected by the US courts. Are you disappointed, Esther, with this news?
I am a little bit, because that's all I'm going to be hearing this Christmas. Everyone knows that it's Christmas time when we hear Mariah Carey's "All I Want for Christmas Is You." I don't know who could probably be the Queen of Christmas other than her. I mean, the King could probably be Michael Bublé, but that's just about it. But there is no Queen of Christmas other than Mariah Carey. We all know this.
So what are your plans for Christmas?
Well, I'm going to be seeing my father, which is amazing. I haven't seen him in 2 years thanks to the pandemic. So I'm really, really excited to see my family. They're flying over. And I'm just going to have a really nice cold Christmas here in London.
A cold Christmas with no heating. I hope your dad's ready for that.
I know.
That's fantastic. Esther, we'll speak to you next week. Thanks so much for coming on the show this evening.